So I want to go through the highlights or the interesting sections of the Dead by Daylight Q&A that happened today on February 4th, 2021. There are some really hot topics that we're going to discuss, but we will get to those, specifically probably the big one that you're all wondering about. We will get to that, but I want to go through and at least try and capture the interesting moments here. I'm not going to listen to the answer of this question. This one was any chance for new variations of the Blackwater Swamp. Basically, they said yes, any and all maps are getting the graphic update. Not really news. We all knew that was gradually happening, so didn't feel the need to sit through this. As there is a lot in this video, I didn't want this video to end up being, an hour, 2 hours long. So we're just going to go through the interesting moments today.
Are there any plans to rework Haddonfield? Because Haddonfield's getting a lot of noises around it.
I mean, yeah, it's getting the same kind of graphical update that everything else is getting, right? Like I said, we're doing all the maps, guys, baby steps, one at a time. I don't know when they're all going to happen. I don't have any dates to hand you, but we're crawling through because we want to increase the visual fidelity and overall presentation of Dead by Daylight across the board. And one of the most important things, one of the most important elements to that is the maps, is how they look, and making sure that we update their looks, but without drastically impacting how they play.
So the thing that I'm worried about here, and I don't know if it's just me interpreting him wrong, because it's kind of like a non-answer. It answers the general question, but doesn't get into actual specifics. So he says Haddonfield is getting the graphic rework, but it almost seems like they're trying to say that while graphically it'll be updated, they're not actually going to be changing things in the map itself. And I feel like a lot of people, whether you play Survivor or Killer, will agree that Haddonfield is just an awful map. If I was to say, I feel it is a Survivor-sided map. When I play Killer, I hate getting Haddonfield, but also when I play Survivor, I also hate getting Haddonfield. I think it's one of the worst maps in the game. The walls are so insanely long. Looping, from a Killer perspective, looping survivors in those houses. Oh God, going up, out the window, down, up, out the window, down. It's just not a fun map. And I'm hoping it's more than just, look, the grass and the fences are prettier now. It desperately needs more love than just a fresh coat of paint. If I was ever to DC, I don't DC, just to be clear. But if I ever was, based on a map alone, it would be Haddonfield. No matter what side I'm playing. All right, next question.
Why don't we have that much time to change things between the PTB and the release? Maybe Pat, do you want to take that one?
So the honest truth is that there just is not a lot of time between having the PTB go out, gathering all of the information coming from you guys, and then figuring out a way to address it that meets the deadlines.
This is why what he just said, I feel like their 3-month schedule that they pretty much stick to is such a hindrance to them, because like he just said, it doesn't give them enough time to make changes before they have to push it out with live. I kind of feel like that's what ended up happening with the Twins when they launched in that beyond broken state. Like animations and stuff weren't even done for it. They had to keep adding patches in over the next 2 to 3 weeks, I believe, after the Twins came out. They just launched in such a broken state because they're forced to stick to this 3-month schedule that even though they themselves knew it wasn't ready, they had to push it out. I'm sure they would love to take the information and apply it before they send out the product. They just, like he just said, Patrick just said, they just simply don't have the time. I guarantee you it's not the developer's choice to release it in that state.
we do collaborate, we do all talk together, we try to figure out what are the solutions, what are the pros and cons of each solution to this problem, right? Sometimes there's an obvious solution, but it would take 3 weeks of work to get done, and that's just not going to make the cut.
Like, they don't want to release things when they're in a broken state, but a lot of times their hands are tied. It's not their say. Another fantastic example of that, actually, Cyberpunk. I guarantee you, the developers who have been working on that game for I don't know how many years now, it was probably a huge passion project to them. And to them, knowing they were releasing the game in the state that it was in when it launched in December, I guarantee you none of them were thrilled about that. Because in the end, it makes them look bad. It wasn't their decision to force that game out early, and they're the ones that are getting the blame for it, which is heartbreaking. Like, no one wants to see a project they're passionate about get that kind of reception after they spend years working on it. Now, here we go.
Is there a key rework plan after the change to Mori's, and when will it be released?
So we do have a plan for keys. These systems are both going to get some bigger changes. More changes coming for Mori, more changes coming for keys.
So Mori's are still being adjusted. Here's an idea. Whereas, let's say it's a game where all 5 gens get done and the hatch spawns after all 5 gens are done. Maybe, just maybe, the Mori will be the same, where once hatch has spawned, you can start Moriing people. I'm just thinking this off the top of my head, so I'm sure whether in Twitch chat now or in the YouTube comment section, you'll be able to come up with things to counter that. It's not a fully fledged idea, it's just off the top of the head. Like, maybe that way it would make them both end game items, opposed to tunneling someone at the beginning of the game and then mooring them and there's still 4 gens up.
Why can killer camp, slug, and tunnel?
This question makes no sense. That's like me going, why can survivors heal, run, and do gens?
Lack of changes planned for Objective Obsession was not very well received. Is there any change planned since then?
We do have something to talk about for Objective Obsession. We wouldn't usually pull something out this early, but because there has been a lot of discussion about the perk, we thought, let's try something different and show you guys a work in progress design.
What they're about to show, they say it's not necessarily what it's going to be. It's an early concept. It hasn't been like programmed or anything yet, but they're presenting it to the community. And even if they don't go with this specific idea, to me, this at least communicates that the community is being heard and they are working on it. Which I've said before, and I'll say it again, I feel is why there's so much friction in the community, because they feel they go unheard. But even by introducing this conversation is huge, and I give full props to them, and I hope they continue to do more stuff like this in the future. I think this is a pretty great idea, if not first step, whatever it becomes. Whenever your aura is revealed to the killer's aura becomes revealed to you. My interpretation of that is that if, say, I hook someone and I get a barbecue reading aura, nurse is calling, trying to think of some other aura, bitter murmur goes off the completed gen. My interpretation is when the killer sees the survivor sees them back. On top of that, if you are the obsession, your aura is revealed to the killer for 3 seconds once every 40, 35, and 30 seconds. So basically, the aura would be exchanged. I'm assuming they would see the killer as well, instead of just the killer seeing them. Again, not 100% sure because it's not a finalized thing right now. It's in early stages. But only being able to see the aura for 3 seconds every 30 seconds opposed to all the time is so much better, because in a Swift, they just can't constantly communicate the killer's location to their team. I don't know if this will be the final result of the perk, but to me, this is way better.
There's a perk that a lot of people like to talk about called Decisive Strike. So we have a change coming up for that, not in the mid-chapter, but in the chapter after that. So not next week, but the next thing that comes out after that, is going to be the Decisive Strike change.
This is
We've talked
huge.
about this perk a lot internally.
It's
There were
huge.
a lot of different options we felt to assuage some of the frustrations that people feel about the perk. The direction we went with was disabling the ability if the survivor does actions that advance their objectives, essentially. So it stays available until you've, let's say, done something useful.
So, Decisive Strike in its new form after this nerf is actually an anti-tunnel perk now, and not, haha, I'm invincible for 60 seconds, can't touch this, da-na-na-na, da-na, can't touch this. While active, the following interactions deactivate Decisive Strike: repairing a generator, healing, cleansing a totem, sabotaging a hook, and unhooking others. So basically, you can no longer run up to a survivor being hooked, go, I've got Decisive Strike, lol, unhook them in front of the killer, get downed, get picked up, Decisive Strike the killer, and then run away scot-free. If you unhook someone, your DS will deactivate and you are going on that hook. So now you actually have to plan your rescues healing. I wonder if it's a full heal state. I don't know how to interpret that. Because if think about it, if you have time to stop and heal yourself, clearly you're not being tunneled. If you have time to stop and heal someone else, you're not being tunneled. I feel like if someone else is healing you off hook, you'd be safe. I think it's you doing the action, not someone doing the action to you. Because all these other things, repairing a generator, cleansing a totem, sabotaging a hook, or unhooking others, those are 4 things that you as a player have control of. So I'm going to assume that you getting healed by someone else will not deactivate Decisive Strike. However, I wonder if you say the person who unhooks you is injured and then you start healing them, are you then deactivating Decisive Strike? Let's assume it's not a full health state, and it's as soon as you start healing yourself, it deactivates DS. It's no longer just a thoughtless, I'm invincible perk. You have to make a choice. Do I stay injured for the next 60 seconds? Or do I say, screw it, heal myself, and risk the killer coming back and finding you before you're fully healed? So there's a lot more choices you have to make now with Decisive Strike. This perk is so much better. One thing people wanted was the lockers. Like if you go into a locker to deactivate DS, they didn't do that. And honestly, originally I wanted it, but now that I'm looking at this, I don't mind it. Because in my opinion, if you are actually getting tunneled off hook, you can still use the locker as a play. And if the killer wants to grab you out, then you can DS them, anti-tunnel. Or if the killer wants to sit there and stare at the locker for 60 seconds, they're hurting themselves for that entire game. So even if, say, they wait out your 60 seconds and grab you at the locker, you just wasted 60 seconds of the killer's time. Assuming you have competent survivors, I mean, a solo gen takes, I think it's 80 seconds. A single survivor on a gen could have it almost done if the killer just sits and stares at that locker for that 60 seconds. So the locker still being a thing doesn't actually bother me. Originally, I wanted it to deactivate DS, but with this form of the perk, I don't think it needs it. I think this is huge. Huge. Also, survivors will no longer be able to sit comfortably on a generator when a killer's coming up and they're going, I have DS. What are you going to do about it? This, in my opinion, makes Decisive Strike what it's supposed to be. An anti-tunnel perk, not I'm invincible, lol, 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 teabag, can't touch this, dun, 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 dun. There is still the end game play where if you get unhooked and you're running to the exit gate, the killer will still, in a way, lose. Like, DS Unbreakable is still there. DS is still huge in endgame. It's just not the daunting perk that it once was. Well, that's going to be it for this discussion video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree, disagree with any of these changes. I'm sure there's going to be some hot takes for Decisive Strike. If you enjoyed it, hit that subscribe button, hit that thumbs up button so you get notified by hitting that bell when we post the next Dead by Daylight video, and come hang out with us on Twitch, where this was recorded with the wonderful people in the Twitch chat. Thank you for being a part of this discussion. We'll see you next time.